Hello and welcome to Sideline Story, your destination for sports news, analysis and discussions. I'm Yang Guang. This week we focus on the latest European derby between Real Madrid and Bayern Munich in their Champions League clash. Who was the better side in that first leg game? What are the moments that define this rivalry? For this chat, I'm joined here with my fantastic co-hosts Tian Yu and Brandon Yates. Alright, let's kick things off with that first leg between Real Madrid and Bayern Munich in Madrid. I mean, wow, what a game.
Yeah.
Wide open and accelerating.
Yeah.
It could be a 4-3, even 5-4 game.
Yeah.
So Tianyu, from your perspective, what was your overall takeaway from that game? And who looked like the better side throughout 90 minutes?
Well, yeah, I think the first leg was honestly one of the best Champions League games we've ever seen in a long time. Yeah. It basically had everything, star power, end-to-end attacks, big saves, tactical battles, and of course, the drama on the pitch. On the surface, it felt like both teams had their moments. I mean, chances were going both ways, and both sides looked very dangerous every time they went forward. But if I'm being completely honest, I do think Bayern were the better side on the night.
Yep.
They've been putting Real under constant pressure, especially, with the way they pressed high up the pitch. It wasn't just random pressure. It was, organized, systemic, and honestly, suffocating at times. And yeah, I think that pressure forced a lot of mistakes from Real's players and directly led to their goals. So yeah, I think to me, Bayern created clearer chances overall, and the scoreline, honestly, could easily have been even bigger if players like Upamecano, Gnabry, or Musiala had been a little more clinical. So yeah, I think in that sense they probably deserve the win.
Probably.
Yes, probably.
Okay, probably.
Yeah, and as Madrid fans, we've seen this movie before. I mean, nobody gave them a chance against Man City in 2022. And yet somehow they found a way. So that's why people keep talking about Real Madrid's Champions League DNA. It sounds like a cliche, but it's true. It exists for a reason. So yeah, I think now the pressure goes to Munich, and let's see if another European night miracle can happen at Allianz Arena.
Right. I mean, Bayern did give Real a lot of pressure, especially on their defensive line. But I think Real is quite comfortable with this pressure. They are comfortable sitting back and playing counter-attack and use the transitions to score.
Yeah.
And they scored one goal through that. Brandon, what's your impression of the first leg? And do you think either team will feel hard done by or relieved heading to the return leg?
I suppose Real Madrid, to a certain extent, will feel a little bit hard done by, particularly with the incredible performance of the 40-year-old goalkeeper Manuel Neuer. He has so much experience and is so comfortable in his position. He's always been that goalkeeper that seems to take chances to showcase his abilities. As like kind of a ball-playing goalkeeper, but also it seems like he does it to kind of build his confidence and like assert dominance in a match, whereas his focus now really in a big match like this, particularly at the Bernabeu, where I don't think Bayern have won since 2001, which is a very, very long time, considering the amount of matches between the two over the years. I think he just used that opportunity to just do what he does best, which is shot stopping. And I think that was probably where Madrid felt hard done by, even though I do tend to believe that Bayern dominated most of the match through pressing and just higher levels of energy and more chance creation, and just looked like the more creative, exciting side. I think also Mbappe getting that the one goal for Real Madrid, I think is going to be incredibly important going into that second leg. I think it makes it a much more open contest. And even though it is going to be at the Allianz, where Bayern Munich and their home support and the da 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 da, da when they score a goal, I think all of those and all of the pretzels and the swinging scarves and the atmosphere that the Bayern Munich fans bring, I think it's going to be a very difficult atmosphere for Real Madrid to deal with. But that being said, like Tian, you also mentioned, this is Real Madrid's stage. And I don't think they care if they're in Madrid or if they're in Moscow or if they're in Mumbai or any other ends. I think that they can bring out, their best performance always. And I
Yeah.
think that Bayern were, I wouldn't say overwhelmingly, I think they were slightly the better side, which I think, is a massive honor in its own, being at the Bernabeu. I think any team that is the better side and claims victory at the Bernabeu, I think, that they can take a lot of confidence away from that. But I think this clash is definitely far from over. I think Bayern will be very confident heading into the return leg at home, like I said, for a variety of reasons, and just because all of their star players, Real Madrid, with all of their match winners and players that have kind of been quiet recently, also stepping up. I think, for example, Trent Alexander-Arnold is all of a sudden looking like his old self. So I think there are multiple factors for Bayern players, the manager, and fans to be aware of as well. So, yeah, I think it's just going to get better. I think this first leg was absolutely monumental, but I think the second leg is going to be even better. But yeah, wow, what an incredible first leg, and huge credit to Bayern Munich. But I think that Real Madrid cannot be counted out just yet.
Right. Well, in my view, Real was actually the better side when we compare the
Really?
two teams' overall level this season. I mean, Real really played their own brand of football
Yeah.
to perfection, constantly, creating threats with their counterattack. Bayern, on the other hand, failed to deliver their best, struggling with loose balls, too many loose balls in the midfield, squandering too many chances in front. I think Bayern was overly eager to close out the game.
Yeah.
One moment really illustrated that. After Harry Kane scored the second goal, Michael Olise didn't join his teammates in celebration. He picked up the ball from the net and rushed to the center circle. I
That
mean,
was scary, man.
Bayern was 2-0 up. What was the rush? I think that action kind of reflected Bayern's mentality. They were so desperate to put this tie, not only in that game, but the entire tie to bed through this game. And so they ended up with, so many avoidable mistakes. That's just my impression of the two teams in that first leg.
Fatigue related, Yang Huang. Maybe
Yep.
they were, and I think also look, I think they created more chances and just looked, especially, going 2 goals up at the Bernabeu is no easy feat. But I think that sometimes once you get to that stage, and when you're away from home and you're playing a team that has so many attacking threats, maybe they got a little bit nervous and thought, okay, now we've really upset Real Madrid and we could be in for a very difficult second half because of the fatigue from the previous match. So you probably find that they were desperate to just shut up shop. And as Mourinho famously said, well, not Mourinho said himself, but people have said about Mourinho, park the bus, just kind of leave the Bernabeu with a result that they probably weren't even expecting. I would be very surprised if realistically deep down if any of those Bayern players or the manager thought that they would leave the Bernabeu with anything more than a draw.
To me, what Bayern did was like they wished to replicate that 8-2 win against the Barcelona in the Champions League. But
I like
I
that
mean,
one.
it's Real Madrid.
Yeah.
You can't knock them down that quickly.
Yeah.
Now, zooming in on individual performances, Tianyu, which player do you think displayed the standout performance of that match? And on the other end, if you had to put some blame on someone for a poor showing, who would be?
Well, on Bayern's side, there are just so many names that's just popped up in my mind. I mean, first of all, like I said, Neuer has to be the standout. He denied Real again and basically stopped any momentum of from turning into a comeback. But beyond him, I have to mention Harry Kane, such a complete striker. Of course, people will focus on the goal he scored, and rightly so. I mean, it was a fantastic goal. But what really impressed me was everything else he did. His defensive work rate, the way he dropped deeper to link up play, his long passing, and especially the way he created spaces for his teammates with his movement. That's, elite send-forward play. And sometimes watching him on the pitch, I can't help but think, what if Madrid had signed Harry Kane instead of Kylian Mbappe? And also, another player I really loved was Michael Olise.
Yeah.
What a talent. He's still very young, but just the maturity of his, in his game really stands out. I think he's not just relying on, sheer speed or those flashy dribbles like other wingers used to do. Everything he does on the pitch just feels very smart. His positioning, his passing choices, and the timing of his runs. I think he plays with his head up all the time. I think he's kind of the winger who always seems one step ahead mentally. On Real side, I think it's fair to say Vinicius Jr. has to take some, criticism from the fans. I mean, yes, he created danger, and a lot of danger, and was probably still Real's biggest attacking threat, but he just wasted so many chances that players at this level need to finish.
Who would you miss? Toni Kroos.
Yes.
I still remember Vinicius Jr. scored that iconic goal against the Bayern from Toni Kroos.
That
beautiful
pointing
pass.
Yeah.
And I think Valverde almost, he did it once, creating a penetrating pass to Kylian Mbappe in the first leg.
Yeah.
But you don't see that often again from Real's attack. And I agree, Manuel Neuer deserved to be the man of the match, and he did win that award. But the poorest performance, I would mention Upamecano. I mean, what a disastrous night for him. He simply isn't suitable for high-level games like this. You just don't know when he will make mistakes. Brandon, who displayed the best and worst performances from the two teams?
Yeah, the Upamecano is a weird one, right? Because he's also super experienced and has played at the highest level and still seems to make strange errors. So I don't know what the story is there, but it seems like some work with a psychologist or something would do him well. But he just seems to really drop his concentration at the biggest levels, which is bizarre because he really is an experienced defender. But I think that's also why, you mentioned the lack of penetrative passes and just sort of the lack of vision and creativity that Madrid seem to have. I mean, they've got these arguably the best, not young, but younger and most desired attackers in the world in Vinicius and Mbappe, right? But they don't have the players that seem to unlock them like, Modric and Kroos would be able to at this point. I think Madrid would, even at their age now, I think even Modric at his age and Kroos at his age, I don't know, Tianyu, as a Madrid fan, I'm sure you would still, at their age, still love to have them in the Madrid side now. Even if they aren't able to run at the levels that they were able to, or have that level of, of stamina.
Yeah.
I think just even one or two passes or just them walking around and creating chances for those players would be hugely beneficial. And also maybe just someone more composed in terms of finishing, like a Harry Kane, would do really well at Real Madrid. I think that's one area where they might be lacking a little bit, is that composure. And I've said this many times. I still believe that Vinicius and Mbappe are the two most exciting attackers in the game, but I always feel like they sometimes in one-on-one moments, or where calm is needed, or just a bit of time and space and vision and slowing things down, I still think they lack that like composure sometimes, which is a crazy thing to say for two players that score so many goals and are so successful. But I still just feel like sometimes they lack that, like, take a deep breath, pause, make a composed finish. And I think that's something that Mbappe, but Vinicius in particular, as a younger attacker, really, really need to work on, even though they are both incredibly talented and experienced and decorated players. I think that's maybe one element that both of them can work on, and maybe they should watch a couple of Harry Kane highlight clips when they're doing their training sessions. So that's the thing. I think there are a lot more question marks at Madrid at this point, as opposed to what's happening at Bayern, where all of their top players, particularly their most important players, I would argue, in Elise, Kane, and Neuer, are performing at the highest level. That's not to say that Madrid can't come back in the second leg and do something incredible with all of the talent that they have. Anything is possible. But if you're just looking at that perspective, as opposed to just blaming Vinicius for being for lacking a bit of composure, and whether Madrid go on and progress from this tie or not, I think they, in my opinion, have a lot more questions to answer than Bayern Munich do at this point.
Okay, before we move on, here's a quick review of the biggest sports headlines in China and around the world for the past week. Bayern Munich claimed a 2-1 first leg victory over Real Madrid, taking a slim but crucial advantage in their Champions League quarter-final. Bayern head coach Vincent Kompany highlighted goalkeeper Manuel Neuer's performance.
Manu is one of the very few. He's not just able to do it for a very long time, but for a very, very long time. that is something that not many goalkeepers, even the top ones, are able to do.
Arsenal claimed a 1-0 first leg win at Sporting thanks to a stoppage time goal from substitute Kai Havertz. Mikel Arteta said he was pleased with the team's performance.
Yeah, extremely happy. Obviously, it was a big night, a big moment in the season, especially where we're coming from. I think we had a point to prove, and yesterday I talked about identity and the things that I wanted to see on that pitch. Certainly happened, certainly was a shift there.
Elsewhere, goals from Julian Alvarez and Alexander Solet gave Atletico Madrid a 2-0 win away to Barcelona in their first leg. Barca was reduced to 10 men before half-time after Pau Kubasi brought down Giuliano Simeone as the last defender. The result marks a sharp reversal from Barcelona's 2-1 win in La Liga between the two sides just days earlier. PSG beat Liverpool 2-0 at home with relative ease. Manchester City assistant manager Pepijn Lijnders says captain Bernardo Silva is set to leave the club at the end of the season.
Every good story comes to an end, and I hope he enjoys the last months. There's only 6 weeks, and has a good farewell, and he deserves all that attention as well.
The 31-year-old Portugal midfielder is out of contract and has given no indication he will extend his 9-year stay. In snooker, China's Zhang Xintong stunned world number 1 Judd Trump 10-3 to claim his first Tour Championship title in Manchester. His victory made him the first player to win all 3 Player Series events in a single season, following his triumphs in the World Grand Prix and the Players' Championship. Golden State Warriors star Stephen Curry returned to the game from a 2-month absence. He scored 29 points with 5 threes in the return game against the Houston Rockets, but his side lost 117-116. China's Zheng Qinwen has withdrawn from next week's WTA 500 event in Stuttgart due to injury. Zheng's withdrawal means her clay court debut of the 2026 season will be delayed. Alexandra Ayala of the Philippines will replace her in the main draw. China's 19-year-old shooter Bu Shuaihang claimed the gold in the men's 10-meter air pistol and ISSF World Cup in Spain, securing his first senior ISSF World Cup title. Bu advanced to the final in 5th place but established the lead after just 10 rounds of shooting and hung on for the win. Earlier, reigning champions Wang Zifei and Shen Lihao won the 10-meter air rifle mixed team title. Welcome back. As we mentioned, the matchup between Real Madrid and Bayern Munich is often called European Derby. But Tianyu, from your perspective, why has this nickname stuck? What is it about these two teams that makes them so different in terms of their identity, playing style, and team culture?
Well, I think the fixture between Bayern Munich and Real Madrid is basically, Champions League royalty. They are probably the two most iconic clubs in European football history. I mean, Real are kind of the kings of Europe, and Bayern Munich are like Germany's, standard bearers. They are definitely one of the most dominant clubs on this continent. Just that alone gives these matchup huge weight. But I think what truly makes it the European derby is the history of their matchups. I mean, the two teams have played each other 28 times in competitive European matches, which makes it the most played fixture in the history of the European Cup and the Champions League. And there are just so many iconic, memorable moments in these matchups, and we'll touch on that later. I think that history is what gives the ties so much, electricity. And also, I think the identity difference between the two clubs is where I think the clubs are so, fascinatingly different. Real Madrid's identity is, glamour, star power, and, inevitability. They are kind of the clubs of superstars, big moments, and almost, mythical Champions League comebacks. Even when they don't play their best side of football, they always carry this aura. Bayern, on the other hand, feels more like a machine. I mean, their culture is built around structure, discipline, and physicality and control. So even when they have stars, the system always comes first. So I think to me, Real feel like, magic and moments. And on the other hand, Bayern feels like power and precision. So I think that contrast is what makes the rivalry so beautiful.
Yeah, there's definitely a divergence in terms of how these two teams have tried to build that unique team culture. And this divergence combined with all those histories like, for example, years back, Bayern's unromantic 9-1 victory against Real in a friendly, and Juanito's 5-year suspension after brutally trampling on Matheus, and the controversial referee calls in recent Champions League matchups really put the two teams on opposite sides. But that said, however, over the years, there are so many star players that have worn both shirts.
Yes.
Xavi Alonso, Arjen Robben, Toni Kroos. I think that shared history kind of softened this rivalry. It's not like in the El Clasico, everything is intensified. Luis Figo and Luis Enrique were esteemed as traitors by the two clubs. But James Rodriguez and David Alaba were welcomed, with applauses and tributes when they came back to their former clubs. So I think this rivalry cannot be defined by two teams treating each other as enemies. They've done some really successful businesses off the field. I think one of the main reasons behind this, nickname, European derby, still those iconic moments, iconic matches between the two for over a century. Speaking of these iconic matches, Brandon, which classic moments are forever burned into your memory when we look back at the long history between these two teams and those classic matchups?
I mean, there's many, but I think I just want to touch on one more thing about the, all of the points that you guys mentioned about Bayern and Real are so poignant and so true. But what I also like about the clashes between the two is that they couldn't be more different in terms of how they've achieved their success. So for example, Real Madrid is kind of like more chaotic and individual brilliance and romanticism and superstars, whereas Bayern Munich always feels like a bit more ruthless and structured and controlled and like game management and collective and a lot more like kind of structured and not, there's less reliance on sort of like superstardom and flashiness and that sort of thing, and it's more like kind of like gritty hard work. So to see those two sorts of elements clash on a regular basis, we must also remember that it's one of the most played Champions League matches between the two of all time. I think those two culture clashes are always very, very fascinating to watch, and like you said, Young Guang, it always seems to be played in a less intense and less kind of ruthless mindset as like the Clasico. It seems to be like a better hearted clash as opposed to the Real Madrid Barcelona clashes. So I think that's what makes it quite interesting to me. But I think you guys will probably have more moments that are burnt into your mind, as Real Madrid and Bayern Munich fans. But I think the 2017 quarterfinal, the Cristiano Ronaldo hat-trick and just, the refereeing controversies, definitely, I think between those two ties, if not in the Champions League overall, one of the most, you guys can attest to this more than me, but probably one of the most debated ties of all time. Just, to have Cristiano Ronaldo in his peak, and Tian, you and I, as massive Cristiano Ronaldo fans, I think, having him at that level is probably something that we will never forget.
Right. I just can't forget the 2014 Champions League clash, second leg clash between Real and Bayern. Bayern lost 4-0 at home. Cristiano Ronaldo did that iconic hand gesture showing number 4. I just can't forget that. It's the most devastating match I've ever seen, even more devastating than that Champions League final loss to Chelsea at home at Allianz Arena. So I guess from there, I had a different feeling for Real Madrid. Okay. Tianyu, from your side of things, walk us through one or two of those iconic scenes that you think best captures or defines the magic of this rivalry.
Yes, as Brandon touched on, I think as a Cristiano fan, in the first memory that always comes to my mind is the goal you mentioned. It was so classic, and that iconic celebration,
Fair enough.
15th Champions League goal in a single season, and in a 4-0 win in Munich. Man, that image is literally burned into my memory. And also, I think the goal itself was, pure Madrid. That, finest fast counterattacks.
Yep.
First, Benzema passed to Gareth Bale running like a machine, and then pass to Cristiano, and who finished perfectly what that
Yeah,
was.
do you really need to put out that details?
Yes, that legendary BBC front line. I mean, at full speed.
Explain it all in detail from
Yes.
start to finish and make the pain last even longer. Yeah. Very detailed explanation.
Yes, it was just devastating. And on the painful side, I will never forget the 2011 to 12 semifinal. That penalty shootout still hurts. I think Ronaldo at that time was probably playing the most complete football of his career. And that night just really stays with me.
Yeah, Mourinho was on his knees praying for the penalty shootout win. I guess you've never seen Mourinho, someone like Mourinho, of that huge ego and pride in himself, on his knees praying for something.
It was touching.
Yeah. And the first game you mentioned, that's when I really hated Pep Guardiola during his Bayern time. He definitely damaged this team. The rivalry continues with the second leg next week in Munich. The tie is far from over. Let's see how the European derby will be played out this season. With that, we end this episode of Sideline Story. Thank you so much for joining us. Subscribe to Sideline Story and leave your comments wherever you listen to podcasts. For more information, you can also check our website at radio.cgtn.com. Until next time, stay on the sidelines with us.